Okay, here we are in a new episode. I'm Jan Alex and myself, continuing the design of the CD part of the product. Yeah, last time we made the initial sketch of something that we think is a good idea to implement as a MVP, proof of concept. And yeah, Damian, you have some sketches around questions that we should go through. Maybe we can start with that.
Maybe you can open that whimsical from last time. I don't have anything like in sketch form. I have just written down some questions I would like to go through with you.
Okay. Great, let's do it.
Yeah, so
Look to the screen. Okay.
yeah.
Should.
So for start, we said last time that like we will define everything through API for the start, so no like UI and clicking and so on. And then just to verify in that area, we want to have the like classical approach that we're doing. So like the YAML files that are then like passed through in some format, like let's say Kubernetes-like format, and then that is sent through API. Or do you want to like do something different?
I mean, I haven't seen anything more user-friendly than editing a YAML file and then being able to send it through.
Yeah, and to save it also like somewhere. Yeah, sure. Okay, so that was the first thing. The second thing is about these like triggers for the stages. We discussed that last time. And I think we ended up with like having one for GitHub and one for like a general Git source. Main question in that area is, do we maybe want to have a semaphore as a trigger source? So like pipeline on specific project, let's say on master finished, and that is defined as a trigger for a stage. And let's say like a pipeline on specific commit on master finished, green, and there are changes in that commit that is like bumping a version. And then the stage that is like packing the version and releasing it starts.
I mean, I can just say quickly how I understand it. So if there is a stage which is always wrapped around like executable, and semaphore pipeline becomes like a primitive for running, primitive undercodes for running things, then I understood that, you know, essentially that will be propagated, you know, through the stage, and a stage will generate something that will, you know, then trigger another stage. And semaphore is on a different level of abstraction, but I might be missing things.
That part is clear. So what I'm talking about, like we can have like a semaphore pipeline as executable inside the stage, but we can also have semaphore pipeline as a trigger event for a stage execution. The same way like some other tools are doing that with like Jenkins, if you remember, when we did some like then like
what would be the use case? I mean,
the benefit there sense. The benefit there would be like a bit better, like let's say UX. And if we go back to that our example of when repository and releasing CLI stuff, what we could do is like we could like modify our approach. So like when you want to release when, you merge to master a change that is bumping a version number inside some file in repository. And then it like runs CI and everything is green. Okay. And then we have a stage in CD flow that like receives a webhook. Okay, this pipeline finished, and it like examines like, okay, there was change in that bump version. And then it triggers like it starts the tag creation and then like all the other process, right? So that would be one flow. Like the main benefit I see here is that like it would be easier to just connect this with existing CI processes, because like you wouldn't have to modify them. You would just like react on, like, once your CI is finished, like you under specific conditions trigger this CI trigger this CD stage.
Yeah, I understand.
Could it be?
It's hard for me to map it through the way. I mean, that's why we are making this, to be able to try it. If we don't do that, what you are, let's say, suggesting is being a good idea, then Git would be a proxy, right?
Yes.
Which will have to be a proxy because you tag, or I don't know what you do exactly.
Yeah,
that triggers the CD stage.
Yes, and then there is that issue. If you remember, like when we were drawing out this for that file repository, if like Git is the trigger, then we either react only on tags, and then we like don't see the CI part on this side on CD UI, and like we don't have them connected essentially. Like CI stops when the tests are passed and everything else, and then from tag onwards is CD. There is that, or you have to like pull whole CI process inside the CD stage, like view, and like to create stages that are doing CI. And then the downside of that is that like you probably already have CI configured somewhere, and you don't want to like.
But one question there is, for that CI part, under which conditions it triggers the CD? For example, it's like there's a build on master branch.
Yes, like you would like essentially what would happen, like we would have a source that is like SAM for webhook, let's say. So whenever some pipeline finishes on the project you choose, like it will be sent, and then we have conditions like branch is master, pipeline is pipeline passed. There are changes in bumping the files or something like that. So like there are various conditions. So like on every pipeline, we would examine whether the conditions are filled to trigger this stage.
But that's just a trigger that still triggers the CD part. You still don't see the CI.
Triggers any stage.
Yes, but if we are we in this way we have like a specific pipeline ID and the thing that triggered it, so we can like render in UI whatever we want. Like we can connect them from workflow page to CD page. We can on CD page we know that this pipeline passed. We have a specific ID to pipeline commit and everything else.
Okay.
I mean, I would leave that as an open question at this point. I would need to think about it a little bit more.
Yeah, so
it has pros. It's also masking some of the cons. It was quite foggy for us to figure out inclusion of that CD component into this whole CD representation. I don't think that we have made much progress there, but I think that it will clarify itself along the way, in one way or another. So I would park it, maybe address next time, just to be able to think about this more. I have nothing against doing that. I just can't foresee far enough what are the implications of that.
Yeah, I think like we'll probably need both. Like we'll need both GitHub and design for pipeline and general Git and like various other things, S3 and like a million other things. My main question here is like I don't see why we wouldn't have this, but the main question in my head is like what to start with. Should we start with this like that is like easier to like add on top of existing SAM for CI things? So like it would be like easier for like let's say existing users to adopt, or should we like start with like GitHub or like general Git and then like you can use it anywhere?
I have something around versioning where I ended up today. Mr. Jekyll from All In Podcast was praising Gemini from Google a lot, so I decided to give it a spin. And I had 3 tabs today, so one for Gemini, one from ChatGPT, and one for Claude. And each of them have
benchmarking AI, yeah.
Each of them have their own strengths and weaknesses. Essentially, Gemini doesn't know to draw anything. Claude is great at drawing things and generated code and so on. And I don't know, ChatGPT is something in the middle, but yeah. So talking with AI on pretty much trying to feed it everything that we discussed here, and then continue and to help me to write it down and so on. I mean, something that was not obvious to me previously, now I think it's obvious, is around version handling and also inputs and outputs. So one of the main benefits of having this CD pipeline broken down like this is being able to know which version is where, and then we come to that, okay, but what is a version? And in my head right now, I mean, maybe obvious, but this app A on certain version, or this git tag, what this git tag would be, but it's essentially a repo name. Let's call it, let's look at CLI. And then a version that is connected to it is maybe v13, that is the tag. Whatever implementation is, but it's essentially a key value thing. And then it would pass to this next stage, that v1.3. And if you would be drawing on the side something that we, I think, deliberately decided not to go into previously. But if you have some, versioning system, table of versions and so on, and if you would have van as like a row, so this is like what, and then kind of these other columns are where, which version of that you have also somewhere. Let's call it simply like app or a service. And then you, for the sake of simplicity, might have a staging environment, and you might have a production environment. And this, and in staging, you might have v1.2, and in production, you might have v1.1. And let's say what is just appearing from CI is this 1.3. So I can include here. I thought it through. So here 1.3 is being baked. Yeah, I may stabilize and so on. So essentially, if I would, in that, let's say this is one presentation for that versioning system. So when that's some entity pretty much represented by a some key name, whatever, and then to it you have attached some versions, and then those versions are sprinkled around in various stages, and then in some more complex system, you could theoretically come and this 1.2 is clickable. You have multiple environments, multiple regions where you're deploying van and so on. And you go to this row and you click on v1.2. And then, let's say those stages in your diagram light up and you have v1.2 deployed in, US East 1, in Japan, and in Frankfurt, let's say.
But also you have like other things here, like beside one, right? Let's say you have toolbox or whatever. agent.
Yeah,
Yeah, but point being, it's like, key value. Key is somewhat of a constant in the system, or not changing frequently. That's the app. And then you have these values, which are the version numbers. It can be a version number, can be a SHA. But if you're hunting down for a particular, let's say, SHA of a particular service, you navigate in some interface, some table-like, whatever, list-like interface here for a particular service. You navigate to a particular version. And essentially, if let's maybe call them labels in some other terminology, maybe in Kubernetes-like terminology, essentially these stages get labeled by the versions of the service that are deployed to them. And if we map it to Damian, this example that you made last time, so essentially we have that app A, which again would be some versions.
Yeah. Okay.
Not to go into the
Yeah. That part is clear, but okay, let me then. But then let's say if I click on this staging, right? So you have it on the right, stage 2, staging v1.2.
Okay.
Not there, the green box
Yeah.
on the right. Yeah.
This
So
one?
if
Okay.
let's say if you click there, then you get like essentially this table, right, where you have like when version 1.2, app A version 5.6, and so on, right? That would be
In my head, but this is the other category. I think those are the most important first-class citizen, and unless there are like 32 things deployed here, those should be always like easily visible and rendered here nicely. But yeah, the short answer is yes.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
One question, just to make this a bit more abstract. This when app A, app B, those are some artifacts, right?
No, those would be like a class of artifacts, and then like the 1.3 is a specific artifact from that.
Okay, the class of
Class.
artifact, and this 1.3, 1.2, and all of that. How is it versioned by a user or?
My understanding is it can be anything. Those are strings.
Yeah,
so generally, what are versions?
It's just labels applied by a user.
I mean, key value. So what we build this versioning system around, essentially, it's just generated from the things that are flowing through the system. And what are the things that are flowing through the system when it's like, let's call it like a resource and version attached to it. And then we pretty much list all those resources that are flowing through the system, and user is giving them whatever names, Zebra, Humura, whatever microservices, let's say, we have in our system. And I don't think that we, as Damian I think points out, have to care if these are semantic versioning, or for Zebra we just have some short git SHA, whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
However,
I think
and then one representation could be you click on Zebra, and then for Zebra you have chronological list of versions. Some of those versions are in some stages. Some of them historically were, but are not anymore. So maybe we can try to represent them. It's
yeah. And one other thing is probably like if you click on specific version, like because there are also like some metadata. Let's say, this version arrived at this time, was built there, passed here, failed there, and so on. So like there's a bunch of like other when you get on a specific SHA, then like you have a bunch of metadata.
And even within one environment, it can have different states. So on staging, the version 1.2 is deployed,
right.
but 1.3 could be in queue, or it
Yes.
didn't even reach the staging.
Yes. So like different instances of the same service application can have like are in different states.
Yeah, and you
at
have
any point of time.
1.1 that's historically was deployed, but it's not deployed.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
and you don't want to show everything, I guess. Or
But then also like
And-
let's say one version could be like deployed multiple times the same thing, right? If like you redeploy it later, or
that's true.
so there's like for a specific SHA, you have again a history. Like okay, this went to staging, then it went to prod, then like we deployed something else to staging and figured out it broke it, and then we redeployed this, and so.
If this 1.2 is, let's say, clickable, I mean, I have no
Yes.
clue if this is the density of data that you want to present, or it's like a more rich table. But if you click on this 1.2, it's a more complex, system, then it can give you a list where, let's say, then when 1.2 becomes some kind of a title. And then in the list below, it says maybe staging A deployed 2 days ago and maybe red, and so on. But it's one way to walk through these. So these, let's not make them these, let's say, yellow boxes become that versioning system.
Yeah, and can you maybe just put that one on the right to be first on the left, right? If you're going.
This.
Yeah, that one would be first on the left. Then when you click on when, you get this second one, and then when you click on.
Yeah. And then that also leads us to the question that Alex raised around artifacts and inputs and outputs. Inputs, outputs, artifacts, those are then again, I think in some way just again key value things. I mean, if for a second we jump to our very concrete example. So how did we start here? We said
We want that one or this one below with app A and app B?
maybe we can go with this one. The point that I want to make is that this is event coming from the outside, but it must carry a version, and version is represented with git with the git tag. In this case, it can be also just a commit, and that SHA is a version, but it has to be something unique, and it can be whatever, but it is a version, that thing which is unique. And then that is input for this stage. So if you're specifying what are the inputs, you say it's van tag. It's one of the inputs. And what's the output? Well, it can be many other things. It can be if it passed or it did not pass, and so on. But one of the things that seems most logical, it should flow out of this and be the output is again this pair when v1.3. And if you would switch the story to artifacts, so in the artifacts world, I mean, there are artifact registries. Let's say one of the prominent products is, I think it's called Artifactory by JFrog, and it's essentially they can hold in, Docker images, they can hold in, gem packages, pretty much like any package of like anything. And what it's providing, it's providing like metadata attached to it and strong guarantees that no one tampered data, and it has like cryptographic signatures and a bunch of other things. In the end, all of those artifacts stored in any of those tools are just binaries. In most cases, it's a file that has some metadata, useful metadata attached to it. And I don't think it's our job to re-implement such a system from scratch of like implementing, 15 programming languages, package, registries and so on. And then the question, okay, if you are not doing that, then what? Well, then for us, the artifact is again, some key, let's say when CLI binary. I don't know what's the good name for it, but let's say when artifact. And then it's, some string or some map or some link or whatever, I don't know. Either a string or some more rich type of data, which is pointing somewhere, pointing to GitHub release, let's say. And it's a binary that you get there. But it's again in that, key value category. Not suitable for representing a version, I think. It's maybe additional data point that goes along with the version. So maybe it's like
I just want to say it's like a bunch of metadata for this, like, right? Because it's in this third yellow box somewhere would be URL to binary.
Here?
Yeah, there. So at least how I see it, so like this third box is created when, like, let's say there is a new git tag, and then as it goes through stages, it's like just adds additional stems or like wraps it around with more data. So like one would be, okay, like you built the binary and uploaded it to Artifactory or anywhere, and then like you get the URL that is like added here as a property of this 1.1.2 version. And
yeah, you're right.
well,
so it's like artifact. Let's just call it artifact for the sake of simplicity.
yes.
And then it's pointing to a string or some map or whatever. That's your point.
No. So it would be here, like, would be artifact URL, right? So like, and then you would have
here, right?
Yeah, there. That would be like artifact URL, and then you could have like various other things.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, so like I think that there is like metadata there, but there is also like not something that would be like metadata, but more like of properties, or let's say when this version of this appears, then like one stage could create documentation for that and upload it somewhere, and then like you would have like one property would be like documentation URL. Then the next stage could, I don't know, build binaries and so on. So like there are like things that are built through CD project that are like become a property of this like version. And then there is like a metadata of like, okay, this was created five days ago, and it went through these stages, it was approved by this person and so on. So like I'm not sure like whether we have to like split them or not, but yeah, at least in my head there it looks like there are two kinds of data for.
Yeah, how we are going to package this data is like less relevant at this point. But yeah, if we would not be passing this artifact URL explicitly here, and it's one of the inputs, which I think is better, and we would just pass this 1.3, then within this pipeline, which is implementing this, there will have to be some knowledge how to figure out this artifact URL. Based on this tag, I would go to this particular repository to get this and that. So the more explicit things are, the better it is.
Yeah, But at least in my point, like let's say if like really like the whole CD process for this when, right, is to get it in the end it is artifact URL. So like you don't start with it usually. Like it is not a pro input here. Right.
Yeah, we don't know. Depending what is this. If this is CI, then I cannot speak about.
Yeah.
Yes, depending what the first block here is modeling. If tag 1.3 appearing means also that there is a release on GitHub releases for this particular piece of software, then artifact URL.
Yeah. You agree.
Maybe not.
Depending where it is built, like if it's built in
Yes.
CI before, or like maybe it is like this box is not git tag, it can be Docker image or registry.
Yeah. What is maybe unclear at this point in those, is there some kind of special annotation? I mean, are there just inputs and outputs which are just, key value pairs? Or there are inputs and outputs and there are like versions and artifacts, and versions and artifacts are also first-class citizens of their very specific type. It seems that it would be healthier that versions are different. But it's maybe one of those things that we cannot figure out at this point.
At least.
I have an example. I spoke with Nander, I think, on Friday regarding their pipelines, and for build servers. So there are like two things that would represent the stage for them. One is the host system is configured by Ansible. So there is, specific SHA pointing to specific version of Ansible code that brought that server to that, configuration. That's part A. Part B is that binary blob of that KVM image for virtual machines. So for them, this app A, app B is that pair. At this point in time, the KVM is identified by a fingerprint, SHA of that, huge binary. And the Ansible code is, just a git SHA of a particular commit that was executed there. But in that area, the open question stays. I mean, I think that example is actually great because they have the clusters are split in subsections of maybe like couple of dozen servers, and then they deploy to one subsection, then to other subsection. They pretty much roll it out. So it's I think it's very good example for that. What ended up unclear to me, should one stage be responsible for also applying the version of the server configuration and deploying the new version of the image of a virtual machine? I mean,
that depends on how you model it.
Exactly. And you can go either way.
Yeah.
Some people will go one way, other people go the other way for valid reasons, depending on their use case. For our use case, we can continue conversation with them and decide if those should be separate things or combined. But it's useful for playing in both scenarios, both together and separate. I mean, I'm glad that we found an example where this A/B actually makes sense.
Okay, but just to circle back, like why is like you mentioned first that like it is unclear about versions, artifacts, and inputs and outputs.
I think it's the
is
same.
connected to that. Like at least like to me, it kind of looks like a kind of clear. So like you have like we have this when 1.2 that is like a ID of this version, however we call it, like this one blob that holds metadata, and that is like a
Resource. Let's call it resource.
okay. So
Yeah,
so
you asked it. Yeah.
yeah. So we have like when that is like a type of resources. Then we have a specific instances with like when 1.2, 1.3, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
At least, and let's call them resources or however you want. And then just like inputs and outputs are like just those pointers. Like that thing can be like the input for this, let's say stage 2 is a specific instance of when, right? And the output is again specific instance of when, or like the input can be app A and app B, but output is just something else.
It's about how you nested that data. I mean, I haven't really spent much time thinking about it. I wanted to make like, or at least in my head, inputs would be something stupid simple, such as again key value, whatever. Just string point, string, you know. And then you can specify inputs and you can specify outputs, you know, when you're describing your stage. And everything can be just input and output, but it seems that things should not be that simple. But
In my sense,
so
it's like
what Damian, you're suggesting is that it's a more rich structure where there is a resource which has a name is when, and then particular resource has a version, and that resource can also have artifact URLs and number of other.
it's not like it's same like with the agent. So you have the agent type, or okay, maybe not right. So there is a class. This when is like a group of things. Like every instance in when will have the same structure,
Set of
right?
properties.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's essentially a class and objects inside that class of that class. So we have when, and then every instance like this when 1.2 is just a key value store. So where you have like artifacts URL, this doc URL, this staging A passed, created that, so on. So like each instance in this when is just a key value store, and then like as it goes through, like as this when 1.2 goes through stages, it just gets additional key values inside it.
Something like this.
Yes, and then you have like data, and then there is that like artifact URLs and so on, like stage 2 passed and so on.
What was the last example that you said? Oh, okay. Yeah, clear. Okay, so what's flowing around are these resources.
Yes.
And resources can have some mandatory, some optional.
Yes, but also like
data.
if resource goes through staging 2, then like it would have like that written inside it, right? So,
On resource level?
well,
I mean,
if a stage is like, let's say, stress test or something like that, then you would have like stage stress test passed right here. So it doesn't have to go like. Remember that example
it went through
where
CI, and then it was deployed to Devel.
but I think like it's not necessarily history. I'm not sure like if we need every piece of information there, but it's some informations are important, right? Because for example, like if when is deployed that staging at, let's say, on Monday, and then we have a policy that says it can go to production only when it is been in staging for 7 days, let's say, then like important piece here would be like, okay, when was deployed successfully in staging on this date.
Yeah.
But if it's like not important, then it might not need to go in there. Yeah, that part is still a bit unclear to me, but
yeah, the thing is, what if you deploy it and then you revert to 1.1?
1.1 would get additional deployed to staging, right? I'm not sure what this would.
Yeah, my point is, if you're saying that we are using this data to check if it was deployed on stage 2 for 5 days, you know, you just have a timestamp, but you don't actually.
Usually it's done is it some kind of immutable append-only data structure that keeps flowing through the system?
Yes,
And
all
everything that's happening is just kind of like Bitcoin, like a ledger kind of a thing. It's like append-only everything. I'm searching for. So there is a thing called. Let me open it. I ran into this while researching these versions. So this open lineage. So it's open for data lineage collection and analysis. Not sure what's the easiest way to describe what it does. So you have a piece of data, that's what they're focusing on, that is passing through some kind of pipeline. Let's say you take maybe an audio recording, like a video recording of a movie, or a scene, and then it's going through some super complex data pipeline when it's being color graded, and then the audio is adjusted, and whatnot, 200 steps, and in each step you're doing some kind of transformation, and this is some actually trivial API. Then for each, as the piece of data is passing through each job, the job is saying, on this piece of data, this job has been started, and then this job has been completed, and then it's entering this API. And then later, if you want to say, okay, I have a final scene in my Gladiator 2 movie, and I click on that scene, those 5 seconds, whatever, and then through that open lineage database, you can see that those frames actually pass through all those jobs and pipelines and whatever, and the first one is the camera that was used in Colosseum. So it's that, I mean, it's but it's attaching data points along the way. So it's a different use case. They're very much focused on data, but this version system, version lineage, those seems to be the synonyms, And if you want to get that lineage of a particular version, I mean, you get into this, and then somehow you end up with this, open lineage. And if we, okay, I'm sure. And if we go back here, and we click on this, 1.2, essentially this here, one of the things that should be presented here is this lineage. So it was like in CI on this date, and then it was a staging on this date, deployed by, I don't know, whoever. And then, it was in production, approved by this person, on this date. And then you get that lineage, version lineage. So that's that versioning system. So
that's essentially it. So like whenever it goes through any event in this CD thing, so like it went through stage, it was approved, it was reverted.
It gets additional stamp here. So you can have
it just gets another line there, and then like you can like reason based on everything there. So
it's an array here, and then you have these events that are appended for each stage that it went through.
Yes.
So output is input plus
output is
stamp.
Output is again like this resource, but modified with new events, right?
Yeah.
And the other thing is like in some cases, like you could have, let's say, one input but two outputs. So let's say that this stage creates a new version of something.
Then it would be a new resource.
Yes. So like at least in
can be a toolbox. So van
yes.
is the input. The output can be van, but maybe you're not going. No one else is going to react to it because no one cares.
Yeah.
Except maybe publishing the changelog, and the output is a resource which is toolbox, which has again a rich set of data.
Yeah, a new resource. Yeah, exactly. And the other example would be like, so we can have like those cases where like you have one input and then it like one version in input and the same one is in output. That would be the most simple one. Then you have those where like you have two things that are inputs, but maybe you just have one output. So the other thing is just used for process or whatever. Yeah. And then like there is also like this case where like you have like one input and then like you produce new outputs, like more versions in the output that weren't there before.
Yeah.
Okay. I think
maybe even
much
a version
clearer.
can change. Yeah, even the version can maybe change. Maybe you have, I don't know, SAM for release candidate 13 for the on-prem, and that release candidate 13 is going maybe to become also the stable version. I don't know if that kind of transformation can happen, but okay, that's
I would probably
unnecessary speculation.
Yeah, I would treat it as two different things, like SAM for release candidates and SAM for releases, like two different classes of resources. But yeah, it depends on the process. If do we have a bit more?
We have 5 minutes.
Yeah, maybe I can just shout out one subject that you maybe like you can then think about by the next time. Okay, so I started like thinking about like, okay, how we would define this stage, and then like there is that like object in like YAML syntax that is like, okay, kind stage name whatever and so on. It has its own ID, and it belongs to CD project. And that's the part where I started thinking is, do we actually need a CD projects in the same vein where what we have currently with CI projects?
What do you mean CD projects, like a project as like a resource inside of Stanford, or?
Yeah, so the main question here is like, do we have like one of these like dashboards that is like called like let's say continuous delivery?
You have multiple. So
yeah, you have to have multiple.
You can have n of those.
Okay. Okay, let me just illustrate two cases that we have currently, and then what are advantages and disadvantages. So for example, right now we have the best equivalent would be deployment targets, right? Where we have deployment targets on project level. And then let's say you have one project that is deploying WAN to production.
Okay.
And you create a deployment target for that and everything else. And then you create another project that is deploying SPC to production. And then you have to recreate the deployment target for production. And you have two copies of the same thing, and you cannot move them in between, and they're like not connected in any way. So if we have like a CD projects in that sense, where like they are separate at each stage belongs to exactly one project, then we have that issue where like some things would have to be duplicated.
No. I would say that on the level of for us, let's say, we will have only one project of the CD type.
Yes, and then multiple views, I would say, like
multiple, with views we can play. But I think that generally on the level of organization, you would allow people to have multiple CD projects for the sake of like experimentation, and maybe some companies have multiple product lines.
Yeah,
so Google is making.
There's definitely need for multiple, and I think better equivalent would be custom dashboards, because you're integrating elements from other projects. But
okay, like just another thing. So the other example would be maybe self-hosted agents, let's say. For now, so that would be like opposite of deployment targets. Self-hosted agents are on the organizational level. So like you create one agent type, and then you can use it in whatever projects you want. You can use it in multiple projects.
But that's not in the ideal shape today, because some people want to house them just to a set of projects, like attach them to some kind of a group.
Yes. Yeah, we need categories for agents. We need.
But I think like nobody wants it like to be scoped on one project.
That's correct.
They want to have it like either for all the projects or for a set of projects. Like these agents can be only used on set of projects, right? So from that
special
point,
cases, you have a group of set of projects that has one project.
But it's probably like you have it general, and then you narrow it down for certain set of things. So in that sense, it's like same here. Like, do we want to maybe like we could have like stages that are like global, and then like you can narrow them down. Okay, these 5 stages can only be used in this thing.
But that's the area of that templating and the reusability. I mean, when I fed everything that we have so far in text formats to AI, and ask, okay, compare this to like all other CD tools on the market and everything, and find me what are maybe some blind spots. And the main blind spot was templating. And I think Damien also mentioned that a couple of sessions ago. So that is in that category of like templating and reusability. So
it's one thing is reusability. The other thing is like history and like and control, right? So let's say if I have, for example, deployment to production cluster, if we have one cluster, it should be like one stage that controls deployment to that cluster, let's say, and everything that goes through that one stage, and then like you have the whole history of like everything that went into that, right? If you have that one cluster that is being deployed to from 7 other things that are in 7 projects, and you have 7 stages that are going into that one cluster in 7 different projects, then you have like history broken down in 7 places.
We
cannot go through it. We are out of time.
It's a bigger. Maybe we can discuss it more next time. I just wanted to like surface it, and so everyone can think about it. Yeah,
that's a good note. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, sounds great. Great session. You guys. Bye bye.